Donald Trump's selection of J.D. Vance as his running mate makes one thing abundantly clear. Trump is obviously confident heading into the November election. He didn't choose Doug Burgum as an olive branch to moderates. He didn't choose Marco Rubio as an olive branch to Hispanics. He went with a white MAGA loyalist, someone with whom there's zero daylight between him and Trump. J.D. Vance brings in no new constituency, no new swing states. He is a carbon copy of the person with whom he'll share the ticket. And yet, while that might betray Trump's confidence, it's also the worst strategic pick he could have possibly made. First of all, there's the fact that J.D. Vance's true feelings about Trump are already beyond clear.
As a running mate for Donald Trump, it is unavoidable to note that his record of remarks about Trump is one that I think could reasonably be described as rich. Maybe that's the word, rich.
I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him.
It makes you think that at a fundamental level, this is sort of a he said, she said, right? And at the end of the day, do you believe Donald Trump, who always tells the truth? Just kidding. Or do you believe that woman on that tape?
No, I cannot stand Trump because I think he's a fraud. Well, I think he's a total fraud that is exploiting these people, who is a total fraud.
Like you said, I agree with you on Trump because I don't think that he's the person. I don't think he actually cares about folks.
So as a conservative who thinks that Trump does not have the answers and isn't qualified to be president, what are you going to do this election, if you don't mind saying?
My current plan is to vote either third party or, as I joke to my wife, I might write in my dog because that's about as good as it seems. But, you know, I think there's a chance, if I feel like Trump has a really good chance of winning, that I might have to hold my nose and vote for Hillary Clinton. Ultimately, I think I'll probably vote third party. I might vote for this new guy who I really like, Evan McMullin, who I actually met the other day. But I think that I'm going to vote third party because I can't stomach Trump. I think that he's noxious and is leading the white working class to a very dark place.
Donald Trump's new running mate. I will vote for my dog over him. I will vote for a guy I just met, Evan McMullin, or Hillary Clinton, or some other third-party entity I can't even name. I will not vote for him because he is noxious and he is leading us in this country to a very dark place. He calls him a total fraud. In addition to that clip you saw there of him on MSNBC on Hardball with Chris Matthews saying that he believed a woman when she testified in the E. Jean Carroll case that she was sexually assaulted by Trump. He believed her, not Trump. He also liked a tweet around the same time saying that Trump had committed serial sexual assault. Another one just calling Trump a monster. He has called Trump a moral disaster. He's called him cultural heroin. He has called him reprehensible. He has also called him, quote, an idiot. J.D. Vance is a very good writer. He wrote in a very good New York Times op-ed that, quote, Trump is unfit for our nation's highest office. He wrote to one former roommate about Trump, quote, I go back and forth between thinking Trump is a cynical a-hole like Nixon or that he's America's Hitler. How's that for discouraging?
The fact that Vance could say those things about Trump only to join his ticket a few years later goes to show that, like Trump, his priority isn't the truth, it's his own pursuit of power. Vance views Donald Trump as a vehicle for his own ascension, meaning he will cast aside anything he once claimed to care about if it means he can get a leg up. If there are any voters who care about authenticity, J.D. Vance is the antithesis of that. In fact, when he was called out for his past positions, on Fox News no less, here's what he had to say.
Well, you know, Senator, this is an evolution, and I know you've been asked about this before, about past comments that you've made about Donald Trump. You've said, I'm a never Trump guy, never liked him, terrible candidate, idiot if you voted for him, might be America's Hitler, might be a cynical a-hole, cultural heroin, noxious and reprehensible.
I was wrong about Donald Trump. I didn't think he was going to be a good president, Brett. He was a great president.
So yeah, if you were looking for a barren husk that was once a principled man, replaced instead by a shameless sycophant falling over himself to kiss the ring, you're gonna love JD. But more damaging than his past positions are his current ones, and that's where the true liabilities lie. And the Biden campaign wasted no time in exploiting them. J.D. Vance supports a nationwide ban on abortion. J.D. Vance denies the results of the 2020 election. J.D. Vance wants to rip away health care from millions. J.D. Vance refuses to protect Americans from gun violence. And at the end of the day, J.D. Vance's agenda is far-right extremism. In fact, J.D. Vance identifies as being 100% pro-life and has celebrated the Dobbs decision, the same Dobbs decision that has lent itself to election losses for Republicans over the last few election cycles, even in historically red states like Alabama, Kansas, Kentucky, Ohio, and Virginia. In fact, Vance literally called rape an inconvenience, which prompted this pushback from Tim Ryan during Vance's 2022 Senate debate.
We read at least a couple articles every week of young people, underage girls who have been raped, or women who have had significant problems with their pregnancy, not be able to get help in the state. They got to go to Indiana, they got to go to Illinois, and that's not good enough for J.D. Vance. He supports a national abortion ban in which he wants women to have to get a passport and go to Canada. Like, we've got to have some moderation on this issue. He's got a very extreme position. J.D., you called rape inconvenient, right? Rape is not inconvenient. It's a significant tragedy. And he thinks that we should have Ohio state law, which says if you're raped or pregnant through incest, that you should be forced to have the baby.
But it's not just his position on abortion. It is the ways in which Vance seeks to reform the federal government that would actually help him enact his extreme policies, regardless of their legality or checks from other branches of government. Vance supports the central tenet of Project 2025, which would reassign 50,000 career civil servants and turn them into political appointees who would be loyal not to the Constitution, not to the government, not to their department's mission, but to Donald Trump.
I tend to think that we should seize the institutions of the left and turn them against the left, right? We need like a de-Bathification program, but like a de-wokeification program in the United States, right? So like, let me give you a couple examples. So one of the things I've always been very sympathetic to is this idea that we don't have a real constitutional republic anymore. What we have is an administrative state, right? The administrative state controls everything, right? So to the point that, like, when Donald Trump wins, he can't even sometimes get his people in core positions of authority in the administrative state. It's like, well, do we have a constitutional republic? The founding fathers actually created a very powerful chief executive, a very powerful president. But if he can't even fire the people in his own administration, like, is this really a successful republic? So a lot of conservatives have said we should deconstruct the administrative state. We should basically eliminate the administrative state. And I'm sympathetic to that project, but another option is that we should just seize the administrative state for our own purposes. We should fire all of the people. I mean, I think Trump is going to run again in 2024. I think he'll probably win again in 2024, and he'll win by a margin such that he will be the president of the United States in January of 2025. I think that what Trump should do, like if I was giving him one piece of advice, fire every single mid-level bureaucrat, every civil servant in the administrative state, replace them with our people. And when the courts, because you will get taken to court, and then when the courts stop you, stand before the country like Andrew Jackson did and say the Chief Justice has made his ruling, now let him enforce it. Because this is, I think, a constitutional level crisis.
If Trump is successful, that would mean the entire federal government would be remade in his mold, which would have massive implications in terms of not only enacting an agenda that might otherwise face legal opposition, but also serves Trump's other goal of turning the government into a tool of political retribution. And when Vance was asked for his thoughts on the threat of Trump assigning a special prosecutor to investigate Joe Biden, here's what he had to say.
I find it interesting how much the media and the Democrats have lost their mind over this particular quote. Donald Trump is talking about appointing a special prosecutor to investigate Joe Biden for wrongdoing. Joe Biden has done exactly that for the last few years and has done far more in addition to that to engage in a campaign of lawfare against his political opposition. I think what Donald Trump is simply saying is we ought to investigate the prior administration. There are obviously many instances of wrongdoing. The House Oversight Committee has identified a number of corrupt business transactions that may or may not be criminal. Of course, you have to investigate to find out. So I think Donald Trump saying, look, let's do the basic work of investigating wrongdoing is a totally reasonable thing for him to do. And frankly, the Biden administration has done far worse. So if you think that what Donald Trump is proposing is a threat to democracy, isn't what Biden has already done a massive threat to our system of law and government?
So for anyone who thinks that J.D. Vance might be anything close to a moderating force on Trump, he won't. He is there to fix the problem that Mike Pence posed, namely that he wouldn't subvert the rule of law in blind deference to Trump. J.D. Vance has already proven through his shamelessness and other lack of any sincerely held beliefs that he will bend to the whim of Donald Trump. So if you were worried about the authoritarian impulses of Trump before, just know that with his new running mate, he'll only feel further emboldened after surrounding himself with the most unapologetic yes man he could find. Before you go, to see more content from MSNBC, make sure to subscribe to this channel by clicking the link right here on this screen. And you can also follow the link to see some exclusive content only on TikTok.